Gareth Thomas, DPA Solar's application engineer. Now, this was an interesting podcast. We covered a range of diverse subjects, including philosophy, growing up in New Zealand, and his absolute love and passion for batteries and how they actually work. So without further ado, sit back, strap yourself in, and get ready for a very entertaining podcast. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get into it. You're originally a Kiwi. You probably still are a Kiwi.
I guess I am.
Tell us what it was like growing up in New Zealand as a kid.
Well, I was born in the UK actually, and we moved there when I was.
Oh, I'll rephrase that question.
But I don't think of myself as British. We moved there when I was about 4. So I went to school first in New Zealand, but I had a British accent, which was like a slight problem. You know, not a problem, but you know, you
stood out.
You stand out a little bit. I remember not liking that, but that goes away at some point. But yeah, it's a good place to go to school. You know, it's a good place to grow up. Wellington. I've got a kid now, and I sometimes think about whether that would have been a better place to grow up because it's smaller. You know.
Yeah. Wow.
Like my son's school his primary school has 800 people in it. 800 kids.
Wow,
So
that's a big primary school.
That's big, isn't it? Yeah. And so there's lots of benefits for it being smaller. It's funny when we go home, my son thinks there's more to do in Wellington than there is in Melbourne.
Why does he think that?
Oh, I think because there's rock pools and there's but everything's short driving distance.
Yes.
So you know, in Melbourne, if you want to go to something that's on the other side of the river, that may as well be in. You know, it's like driving to another city in New Zealand. You know,
the tyranny of distance, isn't it? The geography. Yeah, you're dead right. I think though with New Zealand, it's quite expensive to live there now. Food's expensive, isn't it?
It is now. Yeah, it's difficult to do a direct comparison. I think you have to be a bit careful. But the GST is 15% and applies to food, I think.
Wow.
And they don't have like a tax-free threshold, so you're doing it a lot harder right from the beginning. And just it's. The housing prices, I think, have come down recently, but they were sort of dollar for dollar the same as here for a while. And so, and there's just fewer jobs, it's further away, and it's much easier for companies to have monopolies over there.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, it has quite a few systemic problems, but, you know, I don't know. I haven't lived there for a long time. Like, I don't really know, you know.
I know there's a big discrepancy between the very rich and the very poor. More so than in Australia. I mean, that's everywhere, but more so than in Australia. And food, basically, is it a regressive or progressive tax? Because you know, a rich person's not going to eat 10 times more than you
that's
and I.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
That's the thing, isn't it?
So if the cost of living is 50 grand a year or something, and you earn 60 grand and you get a pay rise to 70, it's doubled your disposable income. You know, so but the tax system isn't proportional for that. Apparently, the gap between the rich and the poor is worse than Mexico.
Really?
I don't know that that's true. That's just
they probably don't take into consideration those cartel owners. But
yeah, I'm not sure whether they get factored into the average.
Yeah, they're probably not on the
not
books.
so good on the reporting. Yeah. It can be a bit slack, I've heard.
That's an understatement. Back to New Zealand. I love New Zealand. I've only been there once, but it's so clean and green, and I like fishing. I like eating abalone because we used to collect them as kids down the west coast of Victoria, and I know in Queensland. In Queensland, in New Zealand, there's a lot of abalone.
Yeah.
There's a guy I know who's a New Zealander, and when he goes back, his mum always cooks him abalone rissoles or fritters.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So which is I've never had.
Is abalone the same as whitebait?
No, the abalone is that the big mollusk.
Oh, right,
with the mother of pearl shell.
With the what do they call it? Power shells.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Did you say whitebait? Yeah, I like whitebait's beautiful.
Do they have that over here?
They do, but it's more Greeks love whitebait.
Oh, right.
The Anglos, they'll eat it when you're paying big dollars in an expensive restaurant, but. Greeks and Slavs, whitebait. I had whitebait as a kid. I had like fishing bait as food type thing, and that's there was no such thing as calamari. It was squid. We were eating that as kids, and
Yeah,
so
okay.
it's delicious.
I'm not sure I've ever tried it, but whitebait fritters are a big thing back home.
That would make sense that they would be made into fritters. I can see that, but the way I've had them, they've just been fried in oil and just really delicious.
Yeah, okay.
So obviously, you've come over from England. You wouldn't have remembered. You were 2 years old or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember very much of it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And your background is what? Is it Scottish or?
Yeah, my dad's Welsh and my mum is sort of half Scottish.
Oh, okay, so we say the UK.
Yeah, it's it's just general UK. It's a mix, But I was born in Liverpool actually, but my parents, because my parents went to uni there, but they didn't want to raise us there because it was it's a bit rough. And at the time, I didn't know this actually until recently, but at the time, like Chernobyl was going on, and they'd had quite a lot of political unrest in the UK in the 70s. With all the blackouts and things like that. So it was just quite a sort of turbulent time, and they weren't sure that it was a good place to be.
Yeah.
So they decided to move to the other side of the world.
Yes.
They brought the car with them, which I think is a really funny thing. Like they
that's
shipped
a
the
story.
car. Instead of selling it and buying another one, they brought the car over.
And what was the car?
It was a Golf. It was a little hatch Golf. I remember it quite well.
It's a damn good car if they wanted to bring it over.
I suppose it was. I just think it was cheap. I think it was hard to get cars in New Zealand at the time. They were all old bangers for some reason.
Yeah.
And then they changed the rules, and then we got all these cheap Japanese imports in a way that Australia didn't, I think.
Really?
Because we didn't have a car industry to protect.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's actually a good point. I can see how that would happen. I know watching some older style New Zealand films, they had a lot of old Commodores and stuff like that. They were pretty popular.
Yeah, there were lots of Australian cars, but lots of cheap Japanese imports. I'm not sure what time that. I'm not really a car guy, but I'm not sure what time that comes over. But it was a big deal. But yeah, no, they bought the car, which I thought was. It's pretty funny these days. You wouldn't ship a car.
No way.
No.
It's like, no. I can't think of another example, so I'll stop
Ship your
that
house.
shipping your house. Or
Well, actually, in New Zealand, it's a really big thing to buy a house on stilts and have it put on your property. Like, so you drive around, and it's still the case, but I think more so when I was younger, that you just drive around and there'd be these big fields full of houses, and the houses are on stilts, and they chop them in half and put them on a truck and take them somewhere and put them on the block. And a friend of mine, very recently, like within the last 5 years or so, moved back he was working with me over here, and he moved back to Wanganui, and he bought a block, and he got a house delivered and stumped for 40 grand.
wow. Well, maybe that's not. Maybe that's an. I know it does happen here, but not that often.
I actually ran into somebody who did it the other day. Someone who's solar that needed looking at, and so it does happen here, and the pricing is actually, it's a lot cheaper than buying a new house or getting one built. So it does happen here. It's just not as popular. Maybe people don't sell them for relocation as much as well, because it's not as much stock. But it is a thing.
Plus, I mean, you wouldn't be able to do it with a newer house. It'd have to be something that was fairly substantially built.
Yeah, so only old wooden houses, bricks out.
With hardwood frames,
Yeah.
all of that. Yeah, I can. Yeah, bricks, bricks definitely out. Be all weatherboards.
Yeah, no sandstone,
No bluestone. Wow.
no cardboard.
So, growing up in New Zealand, as a child, what kind of memories you got? Like, was it the classic stuff? You're riding your bike, you're playing, mucking around with your mates, and
That sort of thing, I suppose.
throwing stones at each other, and
Yeah. It's a very because Wellington's one of the more populous areas, but it's still only 500,000 in the Greater Wellington area, and Central Wellington's much less, and so you can just, as a kid, you're not, and maybe it's a generational thing as well, but you're left up to your own devices a fair bit. And we lived near the coast, and so you're just going down the beach.
oh,
And
nice.
we used to have these, where I lived, there was these things called gun emplacements, which are these things that looked over the harbour during World War
Ah,
II.
right. Battlements, gotcha,
Yeah.
with cannons and
They
stuff.
would have had big guns.
Yeah.
Cannons is a bit earlier. That's knights and things,
Thanks for pulling me up on that. You're right. Touche.
Similar concept though, yeah.
Yeah, you got me there. Thank you. Please continue.
But they're all still there, and they're just kind of left, open. And so as a sort of 12-year-old boy.
So no broadswords or...
No, they still have those, yeah. But that's just for ceremonial purposes.
Sorry. You got me, mate. You got me a beauty. That's great. All right. Well, Summer, I'm gonna dispense with New Zealand. When did you finally come to Australia?
It's like 2005 or something like that. So I finished uni and I was just like working in a hotel, and I was working in one hotel as a porter, and getting paid very poorly, but it was quite good. Like you would arrive, I did the afternoon shift, and 2 hours after you arrived, they would serve everyone dinner. So you'd sit down with all the staff and have dinner together, which is actually really kind of great because you had quite a good sort of social aspect to work.
Very cool.
But then I got offered like $1.50 more to work at like a 4-star hotel in town on the night shift, which I thought was a good trade up, which definitely wasn't a good trade up because full-time night shift is
throws you off.
Yeah, hard work. And so I went and did that, and then I just got, I wasn't there for all that long, like 3 months or something. I just got annoyed one night, and I just bought a ticket to Australia for 2 weeks' notice.
Really? Just like that?
And I just never went back, yeah.
Seize the day. Wow.
Yeah. I just sort of cracked it and went, right, I'm moving to Melbourne. And I was going to keep on going and maybe go to London, but I just never got around to it.
Wow.
But it's just, Australia is the land of milk and honey, really, like, especially then, because you can just come over and you just get paid way more for menial jobs straight away.
Yeah.
And at least then the cost of living was really low. Rent was really low.
Did you come over with a suitcase full of 20-cent pieces and take advantage of that exchange rate? No, so I'm joking, of course.
I came over with like some guitars and things, but I was really like, I left like in a bit of a hurry. And so I was like up all night the night before I left, just sorting things out, getting rid of things and, doing all the things I needed to do. And so when I arrived here, I'd been up all night. I was, so when I came through customs, it's never happened since. They were just like, so what are you doing?
You're looking like a wreck.
Yeah, I didn't look. Yeah, they obviously thought that something was up, so they let me in, but they were a bit. They asked me a few questions, which hasn't happened since. So.
What did your parents say? Did they go, oh, go for it, Gareth?
I can't really remember what they said.
I suppose you're on the plane by then.
I think they gave me some money.
Okay.
Which I went through pretty quickly, I think they were. Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
What did you study at uni?
I studied philosophy, which was like maybe a pretty bad idea, just because.
No, you can't.
If you
can't, sorry.
Can't with a K.
Sorry, can't with a K. Kierkegaard. Yeah. Yes.
If you put philosopher into Seek, not much comes up,
Yeah, right.
There's not many jobs for philosophers.
That's funny. Reminds me of a Monty Python skit, but wow. Yeah, so you study philosophy. So that actually would put you in good stead from the process or the perspective of critical thinking, because that's...
Yeah, it's good for that stuff. Yeah.
It is.
I study formal logic, which is pretty interesting.
Was that Socrates, Plato? What is it?
I mean, the origin of that isn't that, but it's the more formal logic. It's just sort of Boolean logic, I suppose. But it's stuff just like, so that if you have a valid argument is when the truth of the premise guarantees the truth of the conclusion. So an example would be...
Yes, please.
I'm going to make sure I get this right.
Take your time.
is that only men have beards. John has a beard. Therefore, John is a man. But
yes.
if it was all men have beards, John is a man. So John has a beard.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that John is a man.
Yeah, gotcha.
And so what's interesting about that is that there's inductive and deductive logic. So that's an example of deductive logic, when the truth of the premise guarantees the truth of the conclusion.
Yeah, only men have beards. John has a beard, therefore John is a man.
Yeah, but
Gotcha.
the problem is it's very hard. You can tell that John has a beard, but it's very hard to prove that only men have beards.
Yes.
It's very hard to make these totally sweeping statements, complete sets.
Yes.
And so if you look at, we talk about modern science and proofs and things like that. So if I drop this glass to the ground, it's going to fall to the ground. And I do that 100 times and I conclude that will happen every time. I can't witness all of the times that's happening.
Right.
So it's inductive logic is when you, it's a similar process, but they're not complete sets, each of the statements.
Okay.
So it's like all of the swans I've seen are white, therefore all swans are white.
Yeah, right.
Unless I move to Australia. And so that's interesting because it makes you realise that things that, and it's sort of a pertinent political issue these days with truthiness with the Trump administration, is that actually we talk about facts, in this really concrete way with science.
Yes.
But lots of people don't understand like the philosophy of science and what a proof means, and how that is contained to a very set of circumstances and what they're saying when they prove something and so that ties into have you done your own research type mentality and people saying, oh well, I looked it up, I found an article, a peer reviewed article is what people love, but it's like what's the sample size? Because if the sample size is 10, it's statistically not very plausible, it doesn't mean a lot. There's some famous book, I forget which one, it might be Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow, when they talk about this, when they got a bunch of statisticians and they didn't let them use the formula for working out what the sample size was for some scenario. They just got them to guess. This is people who do it for a living, and their guess was always way under.
Interesting.
Yeah, so even the people who do it for a living always underestimate their required sample size when they don't actually run the numbers.
It's interesting because as you were talking, I was thinking of this scenario which is being used time and time again. There's a bit of a scientific experiment to determine the efficacy of a particular drug, let's say.
Yeah.
And they've got some rats, and they want to determine that this drug didn't give people cancer. So they want to see if they got, if the rats got cancer. So they did the test, and the rats didn't get cancer, and that's test A. Then test B did the same test and references A in their report, their literature. Then C, there's a C test, it references B and A, and then there's D that references C, B and A, right? All saying that this was fine and the rats didn't get cancer. Here's the issue. The rats all died, but they didn't get cancer.
Ah.
Yeah, and
but they might have time to develop the cancer.
That's the other thing.
They're also rats. How many rats?
Well, it's an example. So time and time again, this kind of stuff happens. So if I'm reading something that's been referenced, has a reference to 3 or 4 other experiments that say the same thing, how can I even question it? Unless I go right back to the beginning and go, hang on a sec, those friggin' rats died in 5 days. But by the way, they didn't get cancer.
Yeah.
So that happens quite a bit, apparently.
Well, that comes down to your this having more information. Does that actually make you better informed? Because are you actually qualified to interpret the information? So
True.
This is a solar podcast, and I'm sure most people listening will.
Well, sort of. We're talking about a lot of things.
Had this experience when someone says something to you because they've looked into it a little bit of something you know a great deal about, and they say, "Oh, I looked into this." And it's like, oh no, well you don't understand all these other things. A crude example of this is when I first started working in solar and we were working in the shop, and someone came in and had a panel. Let's say it was 120 watts, and they say, well, it should put out 10 amps because it's a 12-volt panel, so 120 divided by 12 should put out 10 amps. And we're like, well, no, because you've got to have voltage headroom to charge the battery. And like, no, I've read the formula. it should be 10 amps. And it's like, so, you don't know what you don't know.
You're dead right. And I'll jump back to statistics. It's like, that's a bit of a funny one that a lot of people can't get their head around.
It's a whole topic.
It's a whole topic, isn't it? Like, okay, I say to you, if you eat a ham sandwich every day, you got a 15% increase in the chance of getting cancer. And everyone goes, oh my God, I'll never eat, or I'll say 30%, right?
Yeah.
And everyone goes, oh, crikey, I'm never going to eat another ham sandwich again. The reality is the chances of getting cancer are 5%, but by eating a ham sandwich every day, you add another 30% to 5%. Well, what's 30% of 5%? Ends up being another 6 or 7%.
How does is it the ham or the sandwich?
Which came first, the chicken or the egg? But it's just an example of statistics. Like if you go, hang on a sec, I've got a 6% or 7% chance of getting cancer from eating a ham sandwich every day. I'm going to just keep on eating the ham sandwich, as opposed to I've got a 30% chance of catching cancer.
But I suppose it's like what's the chance of getting cancer if you don't eat a ham sandwich every day? Because there might be something in that.
Love it.
It's like drinking coffee or red wine has benefits, but also has side effects as well.
Yes, there's these shades of grey. Because I like red wine, but I know if you drink too much, it's not good for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, you've studied philosophy at uni. You've come out to Melbourne, right? And you're going, okay, this seems pretty okay.
Yeah.
Explain your foray. How did you get involved with renewable energy? Or tell us how you've got to renewable energy first.
I'm not really sure exactly what brought it to mind, but I've always interested in electronics and making things and how stuff works and new things. So I guess I thought it would just be interesting. And so I went and did a course at MIT. It was and my philosophy career was going nowhere fast. I was working in a call center. That's a whole another story, but
discussing Kafka and metamorphosis.
No, I worked in like a sort of a disability call center, inbound, not outbound. And we'd sell lots of like incontinence aids and things like that.
Right.
So I have a surprising knowledge of the product range in that area.
Absorbent qualities of those kind of things.
Yeah. Also, I could say a lot about it.
I don't want to. No, not yet. Not yet. No, I'm too young. Give us a few years. Yeah.
There's very little philosophy happening in that area. So I did this course at MIT. It was a year-long course, full-time. And it was really cheap. I think it was like $1,000 or something because it was funded by the government. And so it was this facility at Epping, and it was really good. It was essentially an electrical engineering course, but specific to solar, with a few other things thrown in as well. Like we did the first rate 5 training for when you get like a house schematic, and you sort of trace it and put in the building materials in each thing, and that assesses its thermal.
Environmental building design.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the idea was that if you had the certificate, you could then get paid to go and do those assessments on plans and things. But I think they changed it shortly after we did it.
Right.
And I don't think anybody used it. But there's a few other things that they threw in like that. But most of it was the electrical engineering behind solar
What year was this? Just.
It should be like 2011 maybe.
Okay.
So somewhere around then.
Charlie Muscat wasn't teaching there,
He was. Yeah, but
right.
I wasn't in his class because he did the electricians.
Yep. And he did in the end, he did the renewable certificate of renewable technology as well. He did the solar. I used to go out there and talk.
Right.
Yeah.
Peter Averill was my main tutor.
Right, okay.
Did you know him?
No.
Oh, he was very knowledgeable. And yeah, it was a really good course. And there were some good things that we did, good sort of practical ways of learning things, like with the explanation of how an MPPT worked. And so they had an array, this test array that was out next to the classroom, and they had that, the cables from that coming in, and you sit there, you had this big variable resistor. I guess it's a potentiometer, but it's a big green. If you look, those big high-powered resistors, the big green ones. It's one of them with a slide on it. And so we had to sit there for like half an hour or something and take a reading every minute at each resistance point, and then work out how much power that translates to. And so then you can see, well, if I change the resistance, I'm going to get a different voltage and different current ratio at all these points, and so the total power from the array changes. And you can see as the sun changes and the temperature changes or cloud comes along that point moves. So that gives you sit there and track the maximum power point. So that gives you a really good understanding of what that process actually is, which would otherwise would be maybe quite abstract. And I think lots of people sort of don't understand properly, depending on what they're doing. Yeah, so it was quite good for that sort of thing, and it was very off-grid focused, but also we did string design and that stuff for on-grid as well. And before I finished, I actually got a job in a shop, which was just like on my way home.
Yeah.
I would ride my bike sometimes from Epping back to Westgarth, which is quite a long way. So
that's a good effort.
I would wimp out quite often and catch the train, but and so I'd ride down High Street. And there was a shop in Preston on High Street. One day I just went inside and had a look at his panels, and he was bringing in panels really cheap. So it was right at the beginning of when cheap panels from China had just started.
What was the name of this shop?
It was called Low Energy Developments, and he named it that originally for it to be LED because he was going to sell lights. And it was run by a guy called Rod Irving, who used to have Rod Irving Electronics. And so he was bringing in, panels much, much cheaper than you can get anywhere else. And he had these ads in Renew magazine. And I remember showing them to sort of other installers and maybe the teachers in the class saying, look at these prices. And they said, oh, it's all just Chinese rubbish. And because at the time, people only used like Conergy panels, German-made panels. And everybody.
Or Kyocera.
Yeah.
Japanese-made, beautiful panel.
Yeah. I remember those ones. The thin film, right?
No.
They were mono, were they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mono and poly.
Right. But everybody said, oh, these are rubbish, and nobody would look at that sort of stuff. And so I went and just to have a look at these panels, and I asked him some technical questions about it, and I think he was impressed. I think I asked him what the NOCT value was, and he didn't know what that was. So he offered me a job.
Oh, that's great.
And I didn't have a job, so that worked out quite well. To begin with, he just got me to research all these companies that were Chinese solar manufacturers, and this is the early days of Alibaba and that sort of stuff. Might have been a different one then, like it was like EMFF or something. And then by the end of the year, it all started to turn over to these Chinese panels because I think people figured out actually there's nothing wrong with them, and the price is so much lower.
Oh yeah.
And it was interesting because at the time there was a lot in the media about these cheap Chinese panels, and you would run into people at parties and things. You'd end up talking about solar, and they'd go, "Oh, I hear that they're really awful," and you'd be like, "Oh, it's interesting that was such a topic at the time that people thought that when actually that wasn't the case."
Well, some were. Some only lasted a couple of years, and got that horrible snail trail on them, and acetates coming off, and they were losing their output really quickly. Their degradation must have been like 50% a year, something ridiculous. But there was some good stuff as well.
Well, we never had any problems with the ones that we brought in within a sort of reasonable bandwidth. There were some sort of experimental ones that Rod brought in that didn't work quite so well, but most of them were totally fine.
Yeah, wow.
Given the numbers.
Are these all 12 and 24 volt ones, or were you looking at those ones with a higher VOC?
I don't think there was any high VOC stuff. It would have been, what the nominally 24 volt panels, which were actually 36. So that was an interesting thing, which was that they weren't really suitable for 24 volt lead acid batteries because they didn't have the voltage headroom, especially with a PWM controller.
Block out a few cells.
Yeah. It was, and you had some interesting debates with people about that stuff at the time. And it was interesting because I would have been in my late 20s when I did this, and as the store grew, I could hire people who'd done the course, who I knew from the course, and other sort of friends of mine. Whereas now, like, when you're older, you don't know anybody who hasn't got a job. You know, none of your social group is in that time of life. You know, so I find it much harder to find people these days. Whereas in those days, it was just easier. I just knew people from the course.
Yeah, we gotcha.
You know, it was very, very easy.
Was it just panels they were selling?
We sold panels and charge controllers.
What place?
Plasmatronics? No, it just what were they, like a CMP12? What was the brand? Just all imported stuff.
Okay, right. Yeah, gotcha.
I think we tried to sell. So, you know, I'd done the course, and so I had like the bill of materials for an off-grid system. So I was like, okay, we need the knife blade fuses and the holders and all of that stuff. And we imported some of it, but a lot of it we got locally, especially like cables and things like that, and fuses. I never wanted to bring in fuses because I thought it was harder to verify that they would do what they were going to say they did.
You can only test them once.
That's right. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, that's a really good point. No, but that makes sense to me.
And I didn't know as much in those days. I mean, I wasn't responsible for a lot of the importing, but I didn't know as much about how you check that stuff, about international standards and certificates and things like that. So we had like the whole balancer system, and so it was crazy busy for a while.
Who was the clientele? Was it like more the Caravan brigade or
no,
off-grid?
It was off-grid people mainly,
right?
And we would have some installers buying from us, and some of them sort of bought large amounts, like containers, so they sort of didn't really go through the shop.
Right.
But we'd have some installers, but the installers wouldn't stick with us for very long because we weren't like crazy professional and organised. Really, it wasn't really that type of operation. And Rod wasn't really. He used to tell me off for cleaning up. But the off-grid guys loved us,
right?
And they would come down and with a ute and fill it up with stuff, and they would bring their friend down and so we'd have, and they would buy whole systems, and we would give them lots of advice and things, and we were quite good with that. There was a lot of it was through eBay as well, and you deal with lots of like older guys who'd be like, I don't have eBay on my internet, but my neighbour's got it on his.
Yeah, gotcha. that's you have to keep it straight face. But then again, you use what you use, don't you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. There's lots of ingenuity, people doing things on the cheap, and so you'd help them with that, and you'd sort of, they'd say, oh, can I use stereo wire? And you'd be like, no, you can't use stereo wire. And
maybe if you parallel 100 of them.
Well, that was the thing. I drew the line at actually explaining that was possible. It's like, no, just don't ask me why.
Just don't do it.
Just don't do that. If you don't know the answer to that question, then the answer is just no. And so we'd sort of try and encourage people to do things the right way. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Batteries? Do you sell batteries as well?
We did do batteries.
AGMs.
Yeah. And they were, to begin with, we didn't sell a lot, but they became very popular. But we didn't sell like the OPZV, the proper off-grid ones, because that wasn't really our niche.
Or the gel-based ones.
Yeah. We would sell AGMs, so they had a much shorter life.
Yeah, better for starting currents on, like a lot of them went into four-wheel drives.
Yeah, not the ones we sold, because we were selling like the 200 amp hour, 60 kilo ones.
Oh,
yeah.
They were heavy.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, they still are heavy.
Yeah, they are. But we did a little bit with the forward drive market, but not a huge amount. It was mainly like off-grid stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised you didn't. Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't cater for the Caravan market. It just wasn't
super competitive.
And
I think we tried to get in, and we did sell to them a little bit, but it was super competitive, and it was all very price orientated, and they were notorious in those days for going broke and not paying their bills, and they wanted credit, and we didn't do credit. So I think that was kind of serviced by other people, at least to begin with. That kind of changed as time went on, because in another role I've done a lot with the caravan industry.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Yeah.
But in those days, not quite so much. And I think the caravan industry maybe wasn't quite as big then. Probably still pretty big. I just didn't know much about it. But I do remember an interesting lesson in marketing was like we had these 130 watt panels. We had them on eBay, and I used to, do the ads and make the pictures. And I just put on the picture of the panel, and I just wrote on the picture, "Perfect for caravans." And so we sold heaps of them. People would ring up and go, "These ones are perfect for caravans," and I'd be like, "Well, they're not more perfect than any of the others." It was just kind of the shape, is why it had said that. But people really
wow.
were like, "Yeah, well, I really want those ones."
Wow.
And yeah, that was really interesting to see that.
Create a need from a want, eh?
Yeah. Oh, just the power
classic.
of saying something and people just
Yeah, wow.
just take it verbatim.
Yeah, wow.
And so you have to be a bit careful with that.
That's funny. But I can see, yeah, look, if you see, I mean, we default to those kind of things because at the end of the day, we have faith in human nature. I think that plays a lot of a role, when people do respond to stuff like that. Maybe deep down they know, oh, that's not perfect, but he's saying it is. Yeah. Maybe it is, and I trust him because I'm a human being and all this stuff.
Well, I do that. If you're going to buy two things and one of them says it's specifically for the thing you're going to use it for, and the other one doesn't, and you don't know anymore, then of course you're going to get that one.
Absolutely.
And you've got a limited amount of information.
Yes.
One of the things is it's perfect for caravans.
Yeah. That's what I'm buying. So what happened after working at LED? How long were you there for?
I was there for quite a while. I was there for 4 or 5 years.
Oh, wow.
I don't tend to job hop very much.
Yep.
Then I went to Every Battery, which is like Battery World, but they're not a franchise. It's run by a guy called Francis, a very interesting guy, and he's got a bunch of these shops, and he's got even more now all over the country, and they service, they do lots of automotive batteries, but they also do every battery. They've got coin cells and they've got all the big things, and that was really interesting. I learned a lot. I thought I knew about batteries before I went there, but then you learn a lot because you're dealing with all these different ones, all the funny little button batteries, camera batteries,
wow,
stuff like that, and replacement cell phone batteries were a big deal in those days. It's a non-existent thing now.
We won't talk about why that is because I've got my own theories on that. But,
right, yeah, built-in obsolescence.
Absolutely, absolutely, and a few other things as well. Well, so you're talking about at Every Battery. You're looking at every battery, boom, boom. So you're really gaining a very broad and detailed knowledge of a range of batteries. Yeah. And a range of battery chemistries, I assume, as well.
Yeah, and we had interesting things out the back, like battery testers, and these were for the small mobile phone things as well.
Oh,
but you test their capacity and special little chargers for doing all sorts of different things, and it had these pins that go on the end. We also did repacking batteries, repacking power tool batteries. So you have this spot welder. So you put all the cells together, and you put these tabs that go in between to wire them in series. And you get the power tool and you open it. You take the old cells out, and then you get the new cells.
What, the NiCads you're talking about?
Yeah, the NiCads. And you have to make it in the same shape, because often there'll be sort of two layers, and then you put it back, and you spot weld that all together, and you put it back inside.
How do you keep them the same shape? You put a rubber band around them.
Yeah, something like that. Well,
while you spot welding,
they would have a little cardboard cutout that was the insulation. Not that you need it because it's a plastic casing. So you sort of line it up like that. It's not that hard.
Okay.
And you just copy it and put it back together. But it didn't. Quite quickly that became not profitable, I think.
Labour intensive.
It's labour intensive, and you can buy a new one from China for less than the cost of the cells. But every now and again, somebody would have some old tool where they just you couldn't get a replacement. And so we could repack it, and sometimes you'd be able to put a higher grade cell than was originally in there.
Wow.
So that was interesting. So you just get a working understanding of that type of stuff. and you fit 100 million car batteries, and you do lots of warranty claims on that. So you see lots of dead batteries, and see how that kind of works, and how people manage to kill them pretty quickly, and then other people just have something that lasts forever. And one funny warranty issue we had was a guy bought a car battery to fit it himself, and he rings back not very long after he's bought it, an hour or so, and says, "Oh, there's a hole in the top of the battery. This is covered by the warranty." And we're like, "What do you?" Well, there wasn't a hole in it when you bought it. I think we probably would have noticed. And so my colleague is like, "Well, it's on my way home. I'm going to drop it on my way home." So he goes in there and he sends me this photo, and there's a hole. There is a hole in the middle of the battery, and there is half a spanner welded to the positive, and there's half a spanner welded to the negative.
Yeah.
But the thing I love about that story is that he bothered to ring and ask if it was covered by warranty.
That's faulted its utmost, isn't it?
Yeah. So you get a good understanding of what that means. It's an easy thing to do when you're fitting a car battery, is to accidentally touch the spanner to the chassis when you're doing up the positive. You only do that a couple of times.
That's the thing, isn't it? That people forget that these things have a lot of energy inside them.
Yeah.
And even the small ones can do some damage. There's a stat, I think, for people putting batteries on their tongues or something. 15 a year get killed in the States or something like that. Yeah, something ridiculous.
I do that all the time.
I've heard of people. I've never been game, but I've seen people do it and they've been fine. So I don't know. Maybe these people had very low resistance bodies. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Right, I have to look into that. I mean,
have a look at it.
Doesn't it just go across your tongue from one spot to the other?
I've never.
Yeah.
Have a look.
I will look into that.
Yeah.
I thought the battery acid was a problem. If you put your tongue on it and it's leaking battery acid, then you might do something bad.
No, that would be bad too.
Yeah. But
Did you ever deal with the flooded lead acid batteries with the big? When you were looking at doing the off-grid stuff? Did existing customers have flooded lead acid batteries and stuff like that? What?
Yeah, so we did that in the course and measured the specific gravity and all that sort of thing. But there wasn't a huge amount of them in the market because OPZV was very popular. But actually, like marine batteries, I'm not sure what it's like now, but when I was at every battery, there was still a lot of them were flooded. Just liquid electrolyte acid batteries.
That's right.
Like the Century Marine Pro.
Correct.
And so you'd look in the top of that and just see if the water was up to the bottom level. And of course, forklifts are all still like that. Lots of forklift batteries are still
flooded.
Yeah, Trojan T105.
Because they last. I mean, because some of the flooded, like some of the ex-Telstra batteries, we dealt with some 2-volt cells of this back that high. They were 2,500 amps.
Yeah.
And they were running Hotham Airport, right? Alongside a little wind turbine that did bugger all, and 3 generators. The third one was what they called a suicide generator. It had no dials, nothing. It was designed to run until it exploded. Right. Because if it had been turned on, the other two had already failed.
Right. Yeah.
So they call it a suicide generator. But I remember these big secondhand batteries, and we had to change one. This is at a company many years ago. It was actually C-Tech, which I mentioned off camera to you.
Yeah.
But so there are batteries out there like that'll last a fair whack of time, that are not necessarily, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but not necessarily lithium iron phosphate, right? There's some gels and flooded that will last, depending on what kind of charge and discharge regime you put them through. Yeah,
if you look after them, and it's they're traction batteries. There's starter batteries, which is what's in your car, and there's deep cycle batteries, and the traction batteries, sort of this thing in the middle.
Yes.
They have to have huge currents out, but also have to sort of be able to cycle as well.
Yes.
And so they're made to pretty rigorous standards. And I think they have been more difficult to replace with lithium because the weight is in a forklift or something like that, or a scissor lift, the weight is actually part of the
ballasting system.
That's right.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and it's difficult to make lithium ones which are the right price point, and it's a very sewn up market, I think, as well. All those supply chains and everything have been sort of around for a long time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
it's a controlled market in
Yeah, I
is
think
what you're
so.
saying.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what happened? What's the next job after?
So after that, I went to
After ever, so you were at every battery for a while,
Yeah.
and you learnt about every battery.
After that, I went and worked at Fronius, and I was like a application engineer.
Wow.
And so that was pretty interesting because that was putting my foot back into the on-grid market, which
Yes.
I hadn't been doing stuff with, and it's because just grid tie inverters. And so I learned a lot more about just the general solar industry again, and we do lots of trainings, do lots of presentations. You'd fly around doing lots of presentations and things. But I also learned a lot more about like things like volt var and that sort of stuff, which I hadn't really had any involvement before that, and all that sort of stuff which attempts grid stabilization and just learning, dealing with electricians rather than I would deal with end users a lot of the time, and then being on site and needing to commission things and that idea that at the end of the day, the electrician's done all the work, and then at the end of the day, they got to turn it on and they got to do all this software-based stuff, which is like not necessarily goes as smoothly as it could do, and how that's that tired at the end of the day, and it's really important that that's quick and easy. But the other interesting thing about there was that their philosophy at the time was that people will install what they know. And so they run all these training sessions. It's really important to run them because people aren't going to install things that they aren't comfortable with and don't know well.
100%.
Because they've got to, they quote the job, and then they can't turn around and say, oh, well, actually it took me longer to commission it, so I'm going to charge you more, And they probably don't, they want to have their jobs segmented to one a day or something like that,
At one stage, they had, in the commercial field, such high market share. There's, and not that long ago, so many systems, your classic 199.99999 watts, kilowatts, and you're backing it up with 320 Eco 27s, right? One tracker each. That DC to AC ratio more than one. It was like this standard scenario. And then suddenly now with that size system, people are, in a lot of cases, and we know because we do the grid safe and we see what inverters are doing and all that, the sun grow has sort of replaced, and that's taken a huge market share from.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It is. But I mean, I understand why, but because you've got this totally flexible, like my joke is if you can't design a system with 9 maximum output trackers, get out of the industry. That flexibility but Fronius is a brilliant company, and I think the owner only died like 2 or 3 years ago, didn't he? He was like nearly 100 not out.
Yeah, I don't know, but he originally started
welding,
because they're welding, and I think he did battery chargers to begin with, or something. Because I think the story is that he came from at the end of the Second World War. There's all these cars, but nobody actually has a charger to charge the batteries if they go flat or something like that.
Wow.
So that's how we got to start. I used to know all the stuff because we used to say, the Fronius started back in 1943, at the beginning of the thing.
That was your radio voice. That was great. That's great.
But it all kind of, it's quite a while ago now, so I don't remember it properly. But it's a family. It's not a publicly listed company. It's a family-owned company. It's still family-owned. So that was all pretty interesting. After that, I went to work for Arizon, which is sort of a friend of mine's company who I'd known from low energy days. And that was right at the beginning of COVID. So that was really interesting.
Wow.
Because, I started a new job and then COVID comes along.
Bloody hell.
And I've got to homeschool my son and start a new job at the time. And the company was very small. It was just me and Roy. So it was really stressful. And to begin with, the schools were not very good at doing
horrible
homeschooling. They didn't know how to do it, right?
No idea.
Because nobody did. And so it was, to begin with, they were putting quite a lot of pressure, which obviously was the wrong thing to do because everybody's already under a huge amount of stress. But they figured that out eventually. But that was hard. And
what did you do there?
Well, to begin with, it was just like it had lots of streams, because it's a small business, so you just take business where you can get it. But it sort of grew steadily, and eventually it was actually over in on the other side of town to begin with, and then it came over this side of town to Epping and Thomastown, and we got really into the caravan industry, and it really took off. And selling Victron into the caravan industry.
So it took off during COVID or just after?
Just after.
Yeah, because everyone went, quality of life, what am I doing? Let's get out of here.
Yeah, there was a huge boom in the caravan industry.
There was,
they were
there?
backed up, and caravan industry made a sort of transition around that time from being sold on price to being sold on spec.
Right.
Because there was a lot of people selling their house and buying maybe not a lot, but there was a noticeable number of people selling their house and buying a caravan.
$60,000, $70,000, $80,000 caravan.
$200,000 caravan.
Really?
There's some expensive caravans.
Oh, I didn't realise they were that expensive.
You can spend a lot on a caravan. It's crazy.
Jesus.
And it's really interesting seeing them being built because if you you think, oh, how's caravan built? It must be magic, and then you go there, it's like, well, they buy a chassis. There's places that just make the chassis, and that's just, that's welded together, and that's reasonably easy to understand. But they don't make the chassis themselves. The chassis gets delivered to them, and then they just sort of build. It's like building a house, I suppose. They build a box on the back, and then they just fit it out. And they build the inside of the house, the caravan first, and then they run because they run all the wires, and then they clad it afterwards. Well, there's a few different construction methods.
Right.
Other ones make each wall is like a complete panel that they get made.
Right.
Kind of like a SIPS panel, I suppose. And some of them have their own sort of proprietary types as well. So it's really interesting going around all these manufacturers and seeing how they do things and seeing how they organise their production lines. And they employ heaps of people, and it's an Australian manufacturing, one of the few ones. Campbellfield's full of them.
Yeah.
And I really like that, and learning that these guys are here, and they make this thing, and they buy all the stuff from those guys, and there's these guys down the road do the sheet metal, laser cutting, and these guys make the chassis, and these guys do the powder coating.
Wow.
And that's this thing that you learn is that like these places that do that stuff, they'll do business with anybody. You can just go along and say, I've got this idea, I want to make this thing, and they just have a minimum order, and you can just make your crazy weird thing as well. They don't, I think when you're a bit younger, you think, oh well, they'll go, show me your engineering certificate, or show me your credentials. But actually, so I got a pizza oven laser cut, kind of recently. It's like the files are online, and so it's a mild steel laser cut arrangement. It kind of looks like Ned Kelly or something. You just go and they cut it for you and you put it together, and it's great. Much cheaper than buying one.
Wow.
But I really like that sort of seeing how things work and seeing where things come from and seeing who sells to who and how those relationships work.
The connections between the things,
Yeah. And it's those places, those industrial areas that some people might avoid like the plague because, when I first started doing things in Campbellfield, like driving around there is stressful because it's big trucks all the time.
Yeah,
and especially when you're not on the main road, it's like big truck come around the corner and it's all a bit chaotic and stuff, and there'll be forklifts in the road and stuff. But once you sort of get acclimatized to that after a while, and it's just fascinating because it's just this hive of activity and industry, and everyone's doing something interesting and popping up and going away, and yeah.
They're selling a dream, the caravan people, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Which is that's not a bad thing. Like, it's about the quality of life.
For sure.
And that's why there was that huge run on caravanning going around Australia after COVID, because people went, hang on, they really did a lot of reassessment, didn't they?
Yeah, and it for some reason there hasn't been much success with people importing caravans. I guess because they're big. So they take up a lot of space in a container. The freight would be really expensive.
I'll tell you one thing though, there's a bit of business importing tiny homes.
So why would that be different?
Flat packed. But absolutely terrible.
They're essentially the same
$25,000 you can get one, but you have to change the roof because the roof's sagged and all the wiring is not compliant. You have to rewire, you have to do this, do that.
I think that's a large part of it with the caravans is that they have to be compliant.
Absolutely.
And you can't get them to do it.
And you know, as I always say, it's electricity. It can kill you. You've got to get it right.
Yeah. And so we were quite involved in that side of it.
So you're talking about the battery. Are you talking about complete systems design for the caravans, or
to begin with, we were selling them components, and then when things really kicked up, it was selling complete systems, and after a while, that moved into pre-made boards, and which was a really good thing because because the problem is you'd have someone, the system's not working, and they'd get onto us and go, but it's like, so how did you wire it? And I don't know. And what's the schematic? And so that's really hard troubleshooting something like that.
I bet.
You get good at it, but if it's a board that you made and the schematic's set, you know how it works, and you can say, okay, well, test here, test there, and test there, and it just makes that so much easier. And there's limited things that can go wrong.
Yeah, wow.
But when you're just selling them the components, it's just like,
you know they're going to put them together in a lot of cases in a shoddy, crappy way.
Depending, like the smaller ones were much better at that stuff than the bigger ones because you had a more direct relationship with them as well. But because a lot of them are kind of custom and stuff as well. But yeah, it's just really interesting seeing that evolution as well. And Victron previously hadn't been all that popular because it's a bit hard.
Very popular in Europe, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that classic blue book I've still got a copy of.
Right.
One side, the text is that way, and you turn to the back, you have to turn the book over.
Right.
And the text, and it's all on sizing of batteries using Victrons on boats.
Is that Wiring Unlimited?
I think
There's a really good book about wiring.
it's yay. It's yay big.
Right.
Yeah, but this thick, and it's blue. I've still got it. It's a wonderful. I learned so much about batteries.
Yeah, I wonder which one that is.
I don't think it's Wiring Unlimited.
Yeah, they've got a lot of really good resources. I mean, they're really like miles ahead
it was
of everybody else with that stuff.
It was really comprehensive.
Yeah.
They were talking about, okay, if you've got this system and it's a 50 kilowatt hour day load and you have this amount of time in dock and then you've got a gen set for this run time and this battery storage and here's the calculation and we're using these gel batteries. They used to mention Sonnenschein batteries in the actual.
Yeah, Sonnenschein were a big deal.
So my hat off to them because that book I learned a lot from.
I still have my course book from when I was studying, which is, thick. And it was made by some Queensland TAFE or something. And to this day, it's the best book on off-grid systems.
Wow.
Even though some of it's a bit out of date. And I lend it to people all the time because it's just got such detailed information. And, when I was studying, we would go and get the data from BOM, the irradiation data, and work out what the site's going to do.
Yeah.
And you'd get up on the roof with your little solar pathfinder.
Yes.
The little dome.
Yeah.
And this piece of paper.
They were hard to get.
I think they were crazy expensive. What they were.
That's right.
And then there was like a digital one, which was like $3 million or something. and then smartphones came out, and you could just draw the horizon with the thing.
Yeah, wow.
But I'm not sure people even do that anymore. But because when you've got one 80-watt BP panel that cost you, 10 years' wages.
$10 a watt.
Put it in the very best spot.
Absolutely. And ideally have it in a situation where you can change the tilt.
Yeah.
From 10 degrees to 40 or whatever. And if it was really good and you could have a east-west as well, like it was on a pole. I remember a lot of off-grid. That's the thing, isn't it? Because the design with off-grid is always really being determined by the financial consideration. And I know that can apply to everything, but in the early days, panels are so expensive. That panel to storage ratio was really low, and you had this dirty grey gen set, ideally 1500 RPM, water cooled, 4 pole, boom, boom, boom. but it was going every other day.
Yeah,
If that's, I'm talking the like a full off-grid system using a Victron or a Studer or a Sunny Island or a Selectronic. Studer. Yeah. Many years ago did one of them. They were good little units.
I don't really know those ones.
They
I've
were
heard
Swiss.
the name.
Swiss made.
Didn't they make tape machines as well, Studer?
They may have. I don't know. I just remember these off-grid 48-volt systems. Yeah, we did one. But,
Okay.
So with the Caravans, they're using Victron stuff.
Yeah, they are now. Yeah.
But when you were working
at Arizon, we sort of helped push that into that market. That was
Wow.
kind of our point of difference. But it was, to begin with, it wasn't popular because it's modular and it's very flexible. It's a bit hard. You have to know how it all fits together, and you've got to program it and stuff. So that was a bit hard for them to begin with. And previously, before COVID, it was sold on price, not on spec. So they'd have cheap PWM charge controllers, and they didn't have a lot of panels. But then, the price of panels and batteries has come down. Lithium's come down because you can't have too much lead acid in these Caravans because of the weight.
I was going to ask you, because you would have the specs would have been based on the weight. Because these Caravans, there's a certain amount where if they go over their insurance is void, isn't it? Is that how it works?
I'm not 100% sure, but it's definitely a problem.
Yeah, right.
And the distribution of the weight and things as well, where you put them. And so, but once that kind of changed, that mentality changed a little bit, and the prices came down, it became viable. And people put quite big systems. They're putting like 3,000 watt inverters into their Caravans.
Yeah, but obviously with bugger all solar, a roof area Caravan can only fit so much.
You'd have a kilowatt on them, like quite often. Like you get quite a few panels.
Oh no, they're the big Caravans. Yeah,
yeah, the Caravans get quite big.
And what are they mostly? The thin film ones, or are they the frame?
Just mono.
Right.
They tend to be sort of 180 watts, 200 watts. Because you've got to fit them around the
air conditioning,
all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. But they sort of get better at that as they start to plan for it as time goes on, because it becomes more of an important thing. So they change how their roof is laid out. But I remember one trade show, the Caravan and Camping show. One of the people we sold stuff to, they had the whole array, the whole roof covered, and they had the aircon on and the door open all day.
Yeah.
And the batteries just were at 80% or something.
Really?
Yeah, because the aircon's quite small. It's quite efficient.
They're really efficient aircons. Yeah. Because, aircons their coefficient of performance is getting better and better as time goes on.
And you've got, if you've got, a kilowatt of panels on the roof, it's just going to run... It's not going to touch the batteries. It's just going to run straight off the DC bus. The electrons are going to go straight into the inverter. They're not going to, go nowhere else.
Well, they're going to nudge the one next to them, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah.
we often talk about the whole moving electrons or not. That's okay. So you're at this company here. You're learning about the Victron stuff.
Yeah.
You're seeing some of the earlier. Lithium batteries. Are you talking prismatic cells? What are we talking about here with those?
A lot of them were cylindrical.
Yeah. Are we talking big or the 1865s?
So a lot of the Caravan industry would be like 100 amp hour lithium batteries.
Right.
100 amps, then 120. They get bigger and bigger. It's always an arms race. And so a lot of them were. And when 18650s, they were the next size up. It's a bit bigger than like a D cell battery.
Right.
And so if you opened it up, you'd have like a bunch of them in parallel.
Yeah.
And 4 layers of them.
Right.
And they would be like kind of bolted to these plates. So they're quite interesting because you could actually take them apart and just rebalance them and fix them. But that's just too labor intensive a lot of the time. But that sort of changes to... It changes quite quickly because it becomes more expensive than having the prismatic.
Right. Well, what were the early... there was a few people... Dalesford had a lot of... There was a guy down there doing electric car conversions, right?
All right. Yeah.
And there was a guy over in WA, right? I remember dealing with him in 2012. Can't remember his name. Probably still on my phone. But they were using the prismatic cell, and they were putting them into electric cars, and they were also using this other cell. So and it's not the lithium iron phosphate batteries we know now.
Yeah, they had like the yellow ones.
Yeah.
I had one of them. Were they heater?
Oh, I can't remember.
HETER.
Oh, that doesn't ring a bell.
Tim was one of the guys who worked there in the WA.
I reckon they came. There was blue ones. There was yellow ones. They all came out of the same factory.
The blue were the cattle ones, I think.
They
were more popular. But those guys over there were putting them in a starter batteries.
Right.
And we sold like one or two maybe we didn't at every battery. We looked at it, but we were a bit like, because they didn't have a BMS.
Right.
It's just 4 batteries, 4 in series. But interestingly, I have sitting right next to my desk, and I haven't put it in yet, a sodium starter battery, which is going into my
We're
car.
going to be talking about those sodium batteries because that is very interesting.
But this is specifically made as one. So it's so for the battery nerds out there, it's a 55D23L replacement. So, all car batteries, they have all these different numbers, and they are case sizes. And they might have different specs, but there are a certain set of dimensions and like fittings for where they strap at the bottom or whatever to fit into the different car models.
Right.
And so even though I'm not a car guy, I know a lot about
the batteries that go into the
side
car.
of things. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And so all the German ones, they call them a DIN battery, and they have the recessed terminals, and they're a bunch of different things. And then the other ones don't have the recessed terminals and tend to be like N70s and N70ZZs and 55D23s. And so you can tell if something's actually made as a car battery because it conforms to those specs.
Yeah, gotcha.
As opposed to something somebody's bugging it, just throwing in there and saying, "Oh yeah, you can use it as a car battery," So yeah, that's pretty interesting that they're being sold as cranking batteries.
You've mentioned off camera when you came in for a visit last week about these sodium batteries, and I first went, "Oh, are you talking about those?
Not
those
saltwater batteries, no, not seaweed batteries."
And I'm laughing, and Gareth is laughing internally because these came out probably
8 years ago.
Yeah, 8-9 years ago. There was a fellow in Caulfield who was importing them. He subsequently went back to
I remember.
Won't go into details about who and what he is, but it was a bit of a scam. Yes.
So it was actually a scam, was it?
Well, I don't know if Eddie's got rid of them. We had a set and they never worked. A friend of mine, Trent Mayer, who's been doing off-grid for more years, he can shake a stick at, he tried them and they didn't work at all. And no one I know has actually had them and they've worked. So
I knew someone who had them and they worked.
Wow.
So when I was at Every Battery, there was a guy who, his name was Lou, actually.
They were made in a food-grade manufacturing facility. Well, that was the claim.
Strange.
You can drink the electrolyte if you want. Yeah.
It's a strange flex. But he used to buy some solar stuff from me, and he bought them, and he was really enthusiastic about it. And I remember sort of saying to him at the time, I'm not so sure if that's... Because then, anything that's new, and this was the case with lithium to begin with as well.
Absolutely.
It's like, well, you don't really know what it's going to do, so you've got to be a bit cautious.
LED lights, 100,000 hours. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Maybe I don't remember what happened, but I know he had them and they worked to begin with. I think. It's a long time ago. Yeah.
They had a C10,000 rating.
C10,000?
No, I'm joking.
Oh, you mean like
you know what I mean.
1 over 10,000. Yeah.
No, look, they were a great idea, and from an environmental perspective, and the fact that the electrolyte was.
So was a potato, though.
You're talking about potato batteries.
Yeah. It's very.
I've seen them run a little clock.
The environmental specs on them are great.
That's good. I love it. Potato, we'll get an orange, lemon battery, the whole bit. Okay.
There'll be somebody out there who's listening to this podcast now who's going,
where's my potato?
I never thought of that. And they're going to get 200 of them, put them in series.
That's right.
The voltage.
Yeah. They can build up their Leyden jar collection as well. After your job, you can move to DPA.
Yeah, so
we'll talk about DPA.
DPA is a wholesaler in Port Melbourne. And I'd actually known Richard since my time at Every Battery. because he was bringing in the what were they called? Little white cube battery, lithium battery. We're quite early on in the lithium batteries for home storage. The name
The
escapes
Life
me.
Pro, not that American, not the American battery we were talking about the other day.
No, not Discover. That's
No, that other one called. Oh my gosh, I've forgotten now.
Yeah, man, it will come to me in
American
a moment.
military grade battery.
Not Lifeline. No.
No, it was Life something.
Anyway,
Simplify.
That's the one. Yeah.
So it was Simplify.
Yeah, it was Simplify.
Right.
So he's bringing those in, and he was quite an
Good
early
battery.
person. Yeah, I think they were very well regarded. Still got one in the workshop actually, and they're funny little sort of cube-like thing, and you kind of mount them in a bracket or something.
Yep.
And so we would talk to him at every battery about those, yeah, and then they were looking for sort of a technical support thing, and when you look for a job, and you see things and you think, oh well, maybe I could do that, or you're not quite so sure. You don't usually find something when it's like, that's exactly. I just looked and I just saw this thing, and it was just like, I forget what it said, but it was just tick 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 tick. I was like, well, I can definitely apply for that. And I actually used ChatGPT to write my cover letter.
Oh.
And it was because I did it kind of late at night. And I was like, I'll just throw it in there. I just did that. And I remember when they rang me, when David rang me, and he said something about having a really good cover letter. I was like,
that was in the early days where people realised people were doing that. But the dead giveaway is the M dash.
The M dash. What's the M
Yeah,
dash?
it's a weird thing I haven't even learned about recently. It looks like an extended hyphen that is the width of a capital M, and it's something that's not on your keyboard unless you do an incredibly intricate shortcut. And it basically it's a difference between a comma and a semicolon. But if you see no one uses them apart from say some writers.
Right.
But if you see them in text, it's AI generated. Someone hasn't gone through with a fine tooth comb and taken them out. I know that for a fact because I've seen them in some of the stuff I've generated.
Yeah, I mean, just to go on a tangent, but the AI thing is an interesting curve of like being really enthusiastic about it, and now sort of coming back down to reality about what it's useful for and what it's not, and being on the other side, like using it for lots of things myself. And then being on the other side of people using it on me and being like, oh, God, like just ChatGPT told you this, but it just told you what you want to hear. And somebody contacted me kind of recently actually and said, I want to do this with this piece of equipment. And I was like, and I think it can. I was like, yeah, you think it can, but it can't for this reason, And the documentation says this, but I'm telling you that it doesn't work. And he got back to me and said, oh, well, I've asked ChatGPT has told me all these things. And it's like, well, okay, well, now I have to just tell you a second time.
It's faith in technology. Oh, it says it must be true.
And it's all very believable.
Of course it is.
But it's just wrong.
Absolutely. In the early days, I used to test it out on Australian standards. Can you give me this standard out of AS 3008?
Yeah.
It was making stuff up.
Yeah.
I actually wrote, hang on, there's no clause 2.4.5.3.8 whatever. Oh, sorry, yeah. And I go, what the hell?
The truth of the premise doesn't guarantee the conclusion, but the premise is wrong.
Back to philosophy.
Yeah.
Back to philosophy. So you're talking about these simplified batteries, right? Military grade, American-made lithium solution, lithium iron phosphate, which seems, after the last few years, to be probably the most stable of the lithium solutions.
Yeah. So the NMC was popular for a while.
Can we explain to the people who are listening who go, what's another acronym that Gareth's thrown out there? What the heck does that mean?
Oh, I can't actually remember the full thing.
Sorry,
so we got lithium in there and some other things as well.
Nickel, manganese, cobalt, I'd say.
Yeah.
NMC. It'd have to be that.
So, but what I can tell you is that you have a lithium. They're all lithium ion, right? Which is that the ion is moving from one side to the other.
ION.
ION,
yes.
not iron.
Iron. Yes.
Not iron. And that is, that's the thing that's moving through the electrolyte from the cathode to the anode, and that's how you're charging and discharging. Different compounds of lithium give you different energy densities. But the problem is that some of them are more stable than others. So the one on your phone is much more energy dense than the lithium ferrophosphate. But it's also much more dangerous. But because it's a smaller battery, it's less likely to have issues. But when you have a big one of that sort of energy density, and their charging profiles are different as well. So the NMC has a charging profile that is it's a bit more like a lead acid battery. Is that it's a bit steeper, and so something I came across a while ago was
no absorption charge or anything like that.
I'm not 100% sure. I think it depends on how you categorize that. It would still have a constant current, constant voltage arrangement, which you could classify as that. But with the LG Chems that were being recalled and taken out, one that we did recently at DPA was we replaced some, and it was on a sunny island. But it was a sunny island. It was a few models back, and it had CAN bus and it had lithium, but it only had lithium for NMC. And so what it does is you set the charge rate, or the CAN bus sends its requested charge rate, but it knocks 1 volt off for safety, which in the NMC curve is not very much.
Right.
But 1 volt off for ferrophosphate is heaps.
Wow.
So it only ever gets to 75%.
Who worked this one out?
Collective effort, I think.
Right.
But it to go back to the chemistries, there's different chemistries and they have different properties. There's lithium titanate. There's all sorts of things. But lithium ferrophosphate is well liked for being really stable. It's very difficult to light it on for it to catch on fire. If you overcharge it, it's pretty unlikely to do that.
Yep.
It's not the most energy dense, but it's very good.
But who cares, really? I mean, there's marginal diminishing returns when you're talking about increased energy density. If you're talking about a situation where there's ample room, you're talking about a mobile phone or maybe even a car. Yeah. Well, then number one on the list of selection criteria is probably, after cost, of course, is energy density, isn't it?
And weight in those applications.
Yeah.
But where it doesn't matter in this circumstance, then lithium batteries could probably be twice the size that they are, and that probably wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
And because the cost, we would all have massive lithium battery banks if they were, a tenth of the cost, and they were twice the size. We wouldn't care. We'd find a room.
We'd find a room, exactly. Unless we're on the 20th story of a small 1-bedroom flat, and then built a long time with a.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I'm not. That's not me. We actually have a house and live on 5 acres, so lucky. We're lucky in that respect. But no, I was just it is horses for courses, isn't it? Like the fact that if you've got room, that energy density is not a big thing. It's the safety and the ability to deliver reliable energy day in, day out. Can we talk about what your role is at DPA? But maybe before that, who is DPA and what do they actually do? I mean, I know, but I want to hear. I'm
surprised you don't know. Surprised you got me here. They're a wholesaler, and they sort of specialise in off-grid to a certain extent, because that requires a bit more finesse than if you're just selling panels and inverters to the grid tie market. It doesn't require as much technical support because the systems are more similar to each other than all the off-grid ones are. And panels and inverters is a bit easier than batteries and inverters. It's a bit, and I'm not saying, I don't mean that to be making it sound simple for the grid market. I'm just sort of saying that they're different markets.
The reality is, an off-grid, you've got all these other components, and mathematically from a combination perspective,
that's right.
It's like you've got batteries. You might have AC coupled and DC coupled, or just DC coupled, or just AC coupled. And then you've got the panels. And then you've got a genset invariably with these, sizable off-grid systems, and they have to all talk to each other and they have a relationship, and sometimes they get a bit funny. And
the comms is a huge thing, and for the grid market now.
Absolutely.
But but DPA sort of has its niche really in the off-grid stuff and the battery stuff. And and because that's not well serviced by the other solar wholesalers.
Yep.
And so my role there is sort of the technical department.
Yep.
And we try and give really good customer service and really good support. Sort of, we don't design the systems for people, but we help them design them.
I bet if they came up with to you and said, "Oh, we're doing this," you'd probably gently persuade them. Probably that's not the best battery size. Maybe you should do this.
Yeah. I mean, we do a lot of that. A lot of because there's different products coming in, so people need to know what goes together, just in a most basic sense, and what size breakers they're going to need. And
so you're selling to installers and designers, aren't you? Not the end user.
No,
or
not
both.
No, not really the end user.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's mainly to off-grid installers.
Yep.
And so you get to know them as well. You learn some interesting things, and new products come in. So you got to sort of we do a lot of training and stuff. We do webinars and things, and that has huge value.
Absolutely.
Because like I was saying at Fronius, people install what they know, and people get to know you from doing that, and you know what you know, and you think it's obvious to everybody else. And I've been doing some work on my own place recently, installing solar, and it's really interesting because I think I know because I know it really well, right? I've done it for years, but I don't do it very often. I've been on the tools quite a bit at places like Arizona, like making the boards and crimping cables, and I'm really good with that sort of stuff. But actually, like project managing it and being out there and running the cables through walls and stuff. It's like
it's a thankless task.
It's really hard. Like it's much harder than you think it is. To run the cable through a wall. It's like, well, what if it doesn't fit? What if you can't get it through?
Yeah,
all that stuff. And so, you have to have a good understanding of what the person you're dealing with is doing on a day-to-day basis, and understand that they are going and putting these things in. They're not sitting around reading manuals all day like I am. So I'm in a privileged position that I hear all the problems, and I get to find a solution to all the problems, and I get a concentrated, pool of things. Nobody rings me to tell me that everything went well.
Now you get a Christmas card. Thanks, Gareth. All 5 systems I installed this year, you're running perfectly.
Oh, maybe I'll get one this year. But, it's not. So you get to see all the things that go wrong, and you get to know the stuff really well. Whereas a lot of the time, people are putting something in, and then they're walking away from it. They're not living with it.
Yeah.
So their relationship with it is slightly different. And now with online monitoring, that changes that a little bit. But so we that is a big part of what we do, is being able to offer that support to the installers.
So it's a complete solution. You're not just selling a product, right?
Yeah, that's the value that we add is being able to actually support it, because that's really important for that particular market.
100%. And it's really important for a relationship to develop between the installers and the end users, because you know what? There ain't no grid. Because I remember when I did it many years ago with a company, Harmonic Energy, way back in...
I remember that name, yeah.
We did some good stuff. It was mostly off-grid. Bit of grid stuff after the John Howard rebate scenario.
Oh yeah.
It's like you develop a really good relationship with these people, because you're providing all their energy. It's not like just augmenting to the grid. The grid's already there. We're coming to put some stuff on to maybe so you can reduce your reliance on the grid. Blah diddy blah. No, there's nothing else.
Yeah, and so you have to really manage that relationship and manage expectations in a way that you don't
make them sign the load order sheet.
Yeah. So that was a big thing in the caravan industry, was that like people would go, "Oh, I'm working out of my caravan," and then the inverter stops working, and they're like, "Well, I can't do any work," and I'm in Broome, and the caravan industry, at least to begin with, weren't good at sort of saying to people, "Well, if you're going to rely on the system, then you have to have a backup. You can't expect it You can't expect not to have problems.
Honda EU 2.0. One of those little Hondas was always a great little backup.
Yeah.
But the classic thing is you hear that all the time. I'm working in a Caravan. I'm blasting the air conditioner 24/7. And by the way, I'm parked under a tree.
Yeah.
Because
Why is my battery flat? Yeah.
Why is my battery flat?
Yeah. Well, my neighbour's got one, and he says this is fine. Yeah.
Yeah, but they haven't got a 2-door fridge in their Caravan or something.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a really... Yeah, it needs to be, you're right, managing expectations.
Yeah.
And, like, are you managing expectations with your customers in regards to what, like, I know you're not designing the system for them, but you're sort of, you're suggesting stuff, aren't you?
Yeah, so you have to, so an interesting one that I get asked about a little bit at the moment is the depth of discharge on a battery. And so batteries get advertised as being 100% depth of discharge. And that's sort of a marketing thing that came along. And to begin with, people would sometimes the battery would be, say, 4.8, say it's 5 kilowatt hours, but they would sell it as being 4.8. And so if you discharge it by 100%, then you would actually still have a little bit in there, right? Which is the same as just having a 5 and discharging it to 0.8 or whatever the math works out to. But then people started saying, our battery's 100% depth of discharge. And so everybody goes, I want those ones. But the analogy that I use with people is like, if you just take all the petrol out of the tank of your car, it doesn't break the tank. The tank's fine. But you're walking to the petrol station, So just because you can take all the energy out of the battery, what do you think is going to happen? Well, you're not going to have, the system's going to stop working. So you wouldn't plan your system to have 100% depth of discharge, and bad things happen when you get down there, because you're in a black start scenario. And just because the battery goes down to that doesn't mean that the inverter system is going to operate well. The MPPTs might not kick on, depending on what brand they are. Lots of stuff like that. So it's sort of but the battery manufacturer is going, well, we're just selling a battery. It depends what you're using it for.
And they also have stipulations on the guarantee. In addition to the number of cycles, based on this depth of discharge and this discharge rate. You go over like for instance, the Powerwall, read the fine print, you go over the discharge rate on that and suddenly that your warranty is almost void. And same with other batteries that have a stipulation that you have to bring them up to 100% at least once a week. Yeah,
because otherwise they can cause... it can form dendrites, which is one of the things. If you discharge it all the way down on the plate, it forms a little. Instead of the compound reforming evenly across the plate, it can group together in a little spot,
little stalactite or stalagmite.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
and that can build up over time, and eventually it's going to pierce through and go all the way through the electrolyte and reach the other side, and they're going to have a short.
Is that more common with lead acid batteries than with the lithium, or is it like equal?
I don't know.
Because I thought it was more common with lead acid, but I've never had anyone tell me categorically.
I'm not sure if it necessarily happens with lead acid. I mainly know about it as a lithium thing. Yeah. Lead acid, you tend to get the plate sulfate, and just the reaction won't happen anymore, and so they just become inert.
Oh, okay. I'm
wrong.
But
it could happen with lead acid. It's just not something They typically come in low capacity. They might drop a cell, but isn't usually like a shorted cell.
Okay.
As far as I know, but maybe.
Well, how do you break those dendrites down then once it's happened? You can't.
No, I don't know if you can.
Yeah, right.
I'm not sure.
So,
but the
prudent approach is don't even get to that point.
Well, yeah. So you want to avoid doing that. But if you charge it up, it's leaving it down there, I think, is the main problem. But also overcharging, like charging it higher, has that, and leaving it high has that effect as well.
Right.
So unlike lead acid batteries, the reason lithium manufacturers want you to charge it up every week is for the cell balancing, not because the cells like being high. Because the cell balancing tends to happen at the top of the charge cycle.
Right.
And so...
it's for the sake of the BMS.
Yeah. Some of them will balance all the way through, but a lot of them it's in the top part of the charge cycle. But they don't want to be charged particularly high, and they don't want to be held high, because that's when that can happen as well.
Wow.
And so, but in general, lithium's much safer than the other. Lithium ferrophosphate is much safer than the others, and does less of that stuff. But it still does do that. And once you get the dendrite goes all the way through to the other side, then you got a short, and then you get thermal runaway.
Right.
And that's the big problem that makes things go crazy.
Right.
And that's where sodium comes in, because sodium is just to get into the chemistry of it.
Please.
They have the same sodium and lithium have the same valence, which means they have the same number of electrons in the outer shell, right? Which is 1. They're on the same column in the periodic table. So that means that if you think about like an atom being like a jigsaw, they fit together in the same way with other atoms as each other. They're the same shape, right? But sodium has if you think about back to your high school chemistry, you've got the nucleus, and then you've got the electrons going around the outside,
yes.
and it's a bunch of rings, right? Like planets. Sodium has an extra ring before it gets to that final one, an extra ring of electrons before it gets to the final one that only has 1. And so it has a higher atomic weight than lithium does.
So these are not sodium chloride batteries; they are sodium batteries.
They're sodium ferrophosphate, but the active component is the sodium.
Right.
And so it reacts in the same way. It's the same shape as lithium, but because that active electron, the one in the outer field, which is the one that bonds to the ferrophosphate, for instance, because that's further away from the nucleus, it has less energy. If you just think about it, because this is electromagnetism, right? So this is like magnets are further away, there's less power.
Absolutely.
Right? So it takes less energy to form, but when you break that connection, you get less energy.
Right.
Right? So that makes it less energy dense, but it also means its ability to go in thermal runaway is much lower, because it produces less at the time. So it's less likely to have this chain reaction, right? But the rest of the chemistry is all very similar, so it can slot into the same manufacturing process very easily, because it's just a variation on a theme.
Is it cheaper?
There's a bit of debate about that. Not at the moment in terms of like the commercial product.
Well, there's probably not the economies of scale and all of that.
That's right.
Yeah,
but there's a lot more sodium than there is lithium.
That's what I was going to ask.
Because it's salt, sodium chloride, but there's the sea's full of it, right? So it has to be a certain purity, and
of course.
But it is.
They get them from desalination units.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, they probably do. Yeah, but it's much more abundant in that aspect of things, and I think they believe that will bring the cost down in the future. But the other thing that's quite interesting about it is that, and I'm not a chemist. So,
join the club.
Is that if you think of a lithium battery has a certain amount of capacity in it, right? Let's say it's 10 amp hours, right? But that's actually the capacity that you can take out of it without breaking it, right? So you've got the plates, and one of them's made up of lithium ferrophosphate, right? When you discharge it, you're taking a lithium ion out of that, so you're breaking that compound.
Right.
But the compound the plate is made of lithium ferrophosphate. So if you take them all out, it's going to fall to bits.
Of course.
Right. So it's 10 amp hours, the cell, but it's 10 amp hours without starting to compromise that structure. It's like a lattice structure. But actually, if you took it all out, there'd be more in there, right? But it would be a one-way transaction.
Right.
Whereas sodium is a bigger atom, so the structure of the lattice is just more robust for whatever reason.
Right.
And so you can take more of it out. You can take
without it degrading.
Yeah. So you can take it down to 0 and back up again.
At higher discharge?
I'm not sure about the current rating. It's similar, I think. I think it's slightly higher. It is a little bit higher. So lithium batteries get advertised as like being like 1C, but they're sort of not really.
No.
They struggle to do it. Whereas the sodium batteries can quite easily. So it's a bit higher now I think about it. I forget exactly what the ratio is. but you can take way more of it out. So it's actually a lot less energy dense. But if you think about, we've got these two batteries next to each other, one's lithium, one's sodium. The lithium, I can only take 10% out of it. But the sodium, say it was the same physical size, I can take 100% out of it. So even though the sodium for the same would be way larger because I can take more of it out, it ends up approaching a similar size.
Wow.
But with that aspect with the lithium, it's going in a pretty small voltage window because you're taking a tiny amount of it out, right? Because the voltage is just the inherent voltage of those two chemistries, and then as you take lithium out of one of the plates, the average voltage goes down because you've got all the remaining lithium is still 3.5. This
is the best explanation I've ever heard of this.
But the rest of it is nothing. So your average voltage is going down, right? Whereas sodium, you're taking nearly all of it out. So when you discharge a lithium battery, the voltage is pretty stable, right? You know, we're going from like 55 down to 50 or 48 or something, you know. Whereas sodium, the voltage is down to, it might go down to half or even lower. You can take them down to zero, but the useful operation window is say like 2 volts to 3.5 to 4 volts. I think that there's still a bit of them working out what the optimum is with that stuff. Different manufacturers, because the chemistries change from manufacturer to manufacturer. But so it's sodium ferrophosphate, but the voltage window is massive.
Wow!
So that's a problem for some things. And not for others. So you wouldn't have it in your scooter or your weed whacker, because when it's 50%, it will have also 50% less voltage. So your torque is going to go way down, because you know it's still got all the power and the capacity there, but the voltage has gone way down in voltage. But in something where you've got a PCS where you're just converting the voltage up to 240. Then it doesn't matter. But the inverters that are currently on the market have quite a narrow window because they didn't think that they needed a larger window. So the window was originally set for lead acid.
Yes.
And then lithium is very similar.
Yes.
But if you think about how an inverter works, you've got a bunch of FETs. You know, the power's coming in. You've got a bunch of FETs. It's doing switching to make it up to 230. The higher the voltage, the less work they have to do because they don't need as much current. And so actually it's just determined by the rating of the components that are coming in. So you wouldn't put, you know, you make it, so you've got a 48 volt inverter, the rating of the components on the input is going to be like 90 volts or something. And those are just set, they don't make their own capacitors. And
of course, they buy them from wherever,
And they come in stages like 75, 100, you know, whatever. So those manufacturers, it's not actually that hard for them to make them rated to a higher voltage. So it will be quite easy for them to adjust to these batteries because, you know, you can just run them at a slightly higher voltage, or, you know, your 24 volt, 3000 watt inverter would be able to handle the higher voltages as well. So I've spoken to Selectronic about this, and they're pretty interested, and they think it would be pretty easily done. Even with the existing models, there's probably a bit more headroom in there.
Can I ask a question about lithium? A lithium solution, lithium. I'll say lithium iron. Well, it is ferrous. Lithium ferrous phosphate. What changes in the chemistry to enable something to have a greater discharge? For instance, we've done some batteries, 5 megawatt hour storage with 2 megawatt instantaneous available. Not 3, not 4.
Yeah.
So what changes because there are batteries out there you can discharge at horrendously high rates, right? What is different about them? If I said, here's brand A, lithium iron phosphate, and it's a 200 amp hour at 12 volts cell, whatever it is, and I can discharge this rate, but here's the same cell, I can discharge at a higher rate. What is the limiting factor apart from the speed of the reaction, of the chemical reaction? What's different inside one cell over the other?
The short answer is I don't know.
Yeah, well, I've never known either. I can't get anyone to.
But there's a few things. Did
you say that again? I don't know.
I don't know. There's a few things that it could be, so the first is that lithium.
Because you can order batteries with a higher discharge.
Yeah. So the power cell batteries have really high discharge rates, right? Because they, it's lithium ferrophosphate is kind of like a category. Right, there'll be other things in there,
right?
So it won't be strictly lithium ferrophosphate.
Okay.
So the sodium batteries that we've got now, they're sodium ferrophosphate nominally, but it's more complicated than that.
They're doped with other stuff.
There's all sorts of shit.
Right. That's the technical term.
Yeah,
I love it
because they get little bits of efficiency, and that's just like the crude high school science version of it. And then there's actually there's all sorts of other things. So the electrolyte is what catches on fire.
Right.
And so when you have high discharge rates,
yes,
that is one of the things that limits that. And so different companies have their own proprietary electrolytes.
Okay.
And that's why people talk about solid state
batteries.
as being a big thing.
Yes.
Because once you get solid state, then they become much safer because there's no electrolyte.
No electrolyte.
Yeah, there's no liquid electrolyte.
So it's the temperature of the electrolyte increasing at certain high discharge rates or charge rates that's the problem.
That's part of the problem. Wouldn't be able to say that.
Yeah, wow.
Wow. That's definitely a factor. But it's also what battery companies will warrant it for.
Yeah, right.
So that's a big part of, something you don't really realize until you get involved in companies that are importing things and coming up with their own warranties. And, you see this with car batteries, I suppose, is that you set a 5-year warranty on something versus a 3-year warranty, and you're just wondering, well, how many am I going to realistically going to get back? And I can just have a certain amount. I set my pricing expecting a certain number to come back, and that's a little calculation that you're doing because you don't really know.
No, right,
what's going to happen, how long it's going to last.
There's too many variables, isn't there?
That's right. Yeah. So it's always it's always a bit of a punt, I suppose, depending on how new the product is and what you know and how controlled the environment is. Car batteries is like, it's all over the place.
Car in Darwin the battery's going to last a heck of a lot shorter than a car in Hobart.
Well, the car in Hobart gets really cold, so there's issues with the cranking the battery.
Absolutely, less available. Yeah. Look, it's the batteries I've always seen as like a bit of it's understanding batteries and probably making batteries is probably a little bit of an alchemist dark art. There's some science there, but there's other stuff going on that unless you are actually making them, the nitty-gritty, you can just speculate about it. One thing I do know is that in this world, people always claim things are better than they are, like LEDs, 100,000 hours. These batteries I remember some of the early gel batteries, Fixotropic gel, that's how the electrolytes all bound up. Yes, 3,000 cycles at 55, 60% depth of discharge. What a load of...
Yeah. So sodium's interesting for that because working at all these places I've had, especially the retail places, people are always coming to me and going, have you heard about these paper batteries? Or have you heard, when can I get one of these?
The chewing gum battery.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The one that's made of hopes and dreams.
I love that one.
Yeah. And so people always, what you learn after a while is, until it's here in the market,
the commercial,
it may as well not exist. You've read about it.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. And so that's why the saltwater one was interesting because you could buy it for a short period of time. But then it's like, what does it actually do in the real world? And so everybody was very cautious about lithium when it first came along. And everybody had trouble with the comms because nobody had done comms with batteries before.
Yep.
And they all had these comms. And if you remember like the early Piontech batteries, they had like a screen that showed you all the cell voltages.
Yeah, right.
And then they took that away. And I don't know why, but I think it's probably because people got into the details too much. But ring and go, this one's half a volt. This one's 0.01 millivolts out from the other. And, you know,
better get on the phone and ring their technical department. Right.
But they all had comms, and the comms wasn't very good to begin with. And everybody had heaps of trouble with it. And then people like Power Plus brought out batteries without comms and showed you, because, you know, depending on what you're doing, you might not need it, right?
Well, let's face it, the end user at the end of the day just wants a system that works. And there's only going to be a very small percentage of that particular population or market that goes, oh, I love all the techie stuff because I'm an engineer. Most people go, shit, I'm off grid. I just want the stuff to work. I don't want to come home and go, oh, there's no inverter, my internet's turned off, there's nothing in the batteries.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of those batteries that came out to begin with didn't actually need the comms. But everybody thought you had to use the comms, but actually the comms was optional. And they just operate fine by themselves. Some of them would switch off, though, if they didn't get the stay alive signal and things, but depending on which ones. But, but where were we?
We were talking about the sodium batteries. We're talking about the issue with comms. And the comms.
Well, yeah, and it's, but it's a new technology, right? So what's interesting about it is it has this big voltage window. But the one that I've got one that we're just bringing to market now, and that one they've basically just done the thing that we were talking about before. They just rate the capacity of the battery for the available voltage window that's on the inverters, because the problem with them is that when we first started looking at them, people would say, oh, well, you know, it's 10 kilowatt hours. And I'm like, but what voltage is it 10 kilowatt hours at? Because if it's below 40 volts, none of the inverter is going to operate. So you buy something that's 10 kilowatt hours, but then the inverter stops operating. And it's like, well, it depends what you're using it for, doesn't it? You know, so it has to be, the market is only for ones within that window.
Wow, yes.
So these ones they just rated them for that window.
Yeah, right.
So it's the usable capacity.
Well, that's
the terminology.
Well, that's the real capacity, isn't it? The usable. Really?
I suppose so, yeah. But if you have it DC coupled with a DC to DC converter, then you might be able to do something else.
I understand. Well, you won't have to have that black start problem, will you?
Well, so you'd be able to charge it DC coupled all the way down, I suppose, and then you would be able to use DC loads, which are not very popular anymore.
No.
As much as you liked, but your ability to use 240 would be limited to the range of the inverter.
Okay, I'm going to ask your opinion here on off-grid design.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to a lot of people about this, and there's some pretty gung-ho things. You got AC coupled and your DC coupled. The way I see it, this is my opinion, that if you are off-grid, ideally you've got both.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
I'd pretty much agree with that. I think there's practical considerations. So most Sparkies are more familiar and comfortable with AC coupled. So there's and the equipment is set up for that. So, and it's until recently, you got like the Victron 450, 100, and 200, which are high voltage input MPPTs.
Yeah, right.
And there's a few others. Until more recently, they were more like 150 volts input, and so you'd have to have lower string voltages and higher current.
Gotcha.
And the equipment's not made for it.
Right.
You'd have to bring all the strings back to the DC board.
And you need to put in the current, shunt, and all of that stuff as well.
Shunt's normally on the battery side of the inverter, but the MPPT is going to be.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about the battery side of things.
Oh yeah, for like Selectronic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But so there's a reason that Sparky's like that, like the AC coupled stuff.
Because they know it.
Yeah, and the equipment, the isolators are all of a certain current rating, and the combiner boxes and all that sort of stuff. So you would have had to have lots of, with a big array, you're going to have lots of MPPTs. It's going to be a bit of a pain. But of course, you know, it's more efficient if they're using the load at the time of generation.
Absolutely.
But it's less efficient if they're doing it later, because you're going from DC to AC and AC back into DC again.
And a loss each time on the conversion.
Yeah, it's not a lot though. But then on the DC side, if you're storing it for later, then that's more efficient because you're staying DC the whole time.
Yeah.
But even then, it's most efficient when you match the panel voltage to the battery voltage.
Sure.
But we're not talking huge amounts. And because panels are so cheap,
That's the thing.
The efficiency stuff doesn't matter as much as it used to.
That's the thing. This is when the dollar value of something actually changes the design considerably.
But the cable is expensive.
Bloody oath it is.
So running big cables back from your roof is expensive, and it's more work and time, which is really expensive.
All right, well, let's talk about... so the traditional off-grid started off at 12 volts, right, in Australia, right?
Yeah.
The simple 12-volt stuff, you had a regulator, you ran your DC fridge, some DC lights if you're lucky. Then it went to 24 volts and now 48 volts, and there's 120-volt systems out there, which is, pretty low voltages. But there's also they call it high voltage, but not really high voltage, but it's higher voltages. Can you talk a little bit about that? And what do DPA offer in that way? Mention some products because...
Yeah, so there's I guess strictly speaking, maybe it's low voltage instead of extra low voltage, but I'm not sure what the cutoffs are because they can go up to quite like 800 volts.
Yes.
So that's a really interesting space. So you've got like the 120 volt range. And like the Select Cell.
Yes.
Got a new 120 volt battery that's just come out, just like yesterday or something. And then you get the sort of the C&I batteries.
Yes.
Which they tend to be in series with each other. And they tend to sort of be 400 up to 800 volts.
Correct.
Maybe a little bit higher.
Yep.
210 amp hour capacity. 210 kilowatt hour capacity, I should say. So, and that's a market that's kind of growing at the moment, and it sits in between like megawatt type stuff and residential stuff, and it's for grid stabilization and commercial things like peak lopping, time of use stuff. Often, there's just an issue with getting more power into the building. They want to use more power,
right?
But it's going to cost them a huge amount to upgrade the
infrastructure.
Line. Or the DNSP won't give it to them. They just,
because they've done their transformer assessment. So we've overloaded in this area. Sorry, you can't do. We don't care. We don't. So
I know some of the apartment blocks in the city have got this big issue that they're asking for like a 300 amp AC connection, but they just won't give it to them. But they're going to be changing over to induction cooktops, and they're going to have electric vehicles to charge. And the network's not designed for it. So they're going to have these battery systems. You're on a tower in the city. You're not going to have a lot of solar.
Basement. You're going to have it down below in a dedicated area in a basement. That I can see that happening.
Yeah, and so they do a bit of grid stabilization. It's a bit of tit for tat. We'll give you the
bit of arbitrage as well.
Yeah. We'll give you some back, but give us this big connection. But we won't use it very much. And we'll give some to you. And so that stuff is all kind of just starting to come about. And it's going to be really needed as time goes forward because of the massively increased load. And, electricity with some plans during the day is free. Between 9, you can get these plans between 9 and 2 and electricity is free. You can just charge all your batteries up then and then use them in the evening or whenever you need. And, some people get some businesses get fined when they're over a certain amount, so they need to do peak lopping. So
you're talking about demand charges when you say fined? Yeah, demand charges,
not fines.
Yes, I was going to say. Yes.
Well, yeah, it
is a fine in a way, though, isn't it?
I suppose it is. Yeah. And so it's these sort of kind of like mid-range systems, I suppose, are really needed. And so we do a lot with a brand called Discover. It's a Canadian company, and they do a rack mount 48 volt battery,
right,
which is really great. And they have one called the Helios, which is really popular, which is like a 16 kilowatt hour battery. It's kind of similar like a Tesla Powerwall, but it's just a 48 volt battery, and that's really great because it's IP65 rated, so you don't need like an enclosure. So, if you ever go and install rack mount batteries, you spend a lot of your time setting, putting them all in the enclosure and, it's just running the cables and all that stuff. So this is just a 16 kilowatt hour IP65 rated battery. So it's really quick to install.
As long as you don't put it on a west or north facing wall or even east facing. See, that's the whole issue with the batteries, isn't it? Yeah, they're IP rated, but we know if they're subjected to those thermal differences between freezing or below freezing in Canberra.
Well, these ones, they've got heaters in them, actually. So because they're from Canada, they've got all sorts of problems.
Oh, wow. That's a big thing.
Yeah, but it's not such an issue over here.
Do you reckon? Because I suppose if you're doing everything and you abide by the warranty and something F's up on the battery, you got a fair claim.
I think it's more of an issue than people think it is, but it's not a big issue.
Okay, right.
But
that's interesting.
yeah, but they've got that built into them. But people aren't generally putting them outside, in my experience. It's just
all the you see a lot of marketing stuff, and they've got I'm not saying with the Discovery battery or Discover.
It's Discover, yeah.
Discover. It's I don't know. I've had a lot of conversations over the years with people putting batteries outside, and Anyway, it's Well,
if it's under the eave, and it's not going to be in full sunlight.
That's it.
Then that's okay.
Exactly. I agree.
If it needs to, if it's out in the middle of a field, actually everything needs to be double walled.
Damn right.
Yeah, and that's a whole other thing. But it might be IP65, it might be at 55.
Hey, but it can go outside.
It's outside rated is the main point. But more what we found with it is that it's just you don't need an enclosure. So it's just way quicker to do install because it is its own enclosure. And if you have a bunch of them parallel, then you just put them together on the bus. And so it's just really quick to install, and it's a great price. And the reason for that, and the reason it can be bigger, is because cells used, as I was describing to you before, these 100 amp hour batteries with lots of little cylindrical cells.
Yes,
in them.
yes.
The cells now are really big.
Yep.
And so these are using like 330 amp hour cells. So you can just it's much easier to manufacture and cheaper to manufacture these big batteries.
Oh, okay.
Because the big cells are available. Whereas before it'd all be in parallel, which makes all your BMS way more complicated because you got to not just do series balancing, you got to do parallel
balancing. Yeah,
much more difficult. So so that makes it much easier to make them and cheaper to make them. And when you have them in parallel, they got their separate BMSs, they're separate entities.
Right.
So that's easier.
And how do they join together? Like there's some systems where you can drop one battery on top of another.
No, it's not. They're a bit big for that.
So it's a two-person,
they're about 130 kilos or something.
But they're 130 kilos.
But they're ground mounted.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay.
You put them on the bracket on the wall, but they're. To put them together, you're just going to put them onto a common
right.
bus.
So pretty easy,
Yeah. So they're very popular and fit the niche very well of the new rebate and things. And we're moving a little bit more into the on-grid market for the hybrid stuff.
I was going to say you must be looking at that, of course.
So with the day inverters, and they pair very well with the...
the DEYEs.
Yeah. And Discover, who are over in Canada, do a lot of business in the States, and over there they have Solarc, which is day. It's just a rebrand.
Oh, okay.
It's just a day with a different name on the front. Because there's a few different day derivatives around the world. There's Solarc in the States, and then is it SunSync maybe in the UK? But they're all actually day, just with a different sticker on the front. The firmware is identical.
Well, it's like the some of the SMAs are rebadged SunGrow.
Right, yeah. But sometimes they will have that sort of stuff, and it will have slight differences and slight different firmware.
Yeah, right.
These are 100% identical.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they...
and you've obviously put them through their paces. And
I've got one in the office.
Wow, yeah.
So I play with that. And it's really useful, in terms of our tech support that we do, because I've got one there, and I've got a Selectronic, and I've got Victron as well. They're the three big ones that we do. So when I'm talking to somebody, I've actually got it in front of me, and I can go through the menu. And I find that much easier to talk somebody through something if I've got it in front of me.
Oh, yeah.
It makes a big difference.
Oh,
and if they've got it doing something odd, I try and get my one to do the same thing.
Yeah, right.
If
that's great.
If that's possible,
Can I ask with DPA, and I should know, and I do sort of know, but for the people who don't know, I want you to answer. So you're doing Victron, because you're wearing a Victron hat. Obviously, if you were not doing Victron, wearing a Victron hat, that'd be weird.
That'd be weird.
That'd be weird. And Selectronic as well.
Yeah, we do. So our big brands in the inverters are Victron, Selectronic, and Noarc/Day.
Yep.
And then
the batteries.
Also, just with the inverters, we also are doing Solus as well.
Oh, okay, right.
And that's mainly so Discover also have this high voltage battery, a 210 kilowatt hour, which is for that CNI market.
Gotcha.
And that's with the Solus. And the reason for that is because in the States, there's all these runs on the board in the States with the Solus inverter.
Yes.
So they're putting them in. So with the tariffs in the States, what happened, it's really interesting. It's terrible for lithium batteries, right? It's going to put these massive tariffs. But actually, American-made lithium batteries are like 15 times the cost or something. So it doesn't even touch the sides. And all the importers, everybody panicked and just it was a bonanza. Everybody's buying everything because they don't know what the price might double next week. So actually, business was great. And
the upside, eh?
Yeah. And so with the Solus inverter, there's lots of inverters that battery will work with, but the Solus is the first one off the board because
it's proven.
That's right.
Well, this is the thing, and you're talking about batteries off grid, and now moving into that hybrid on the grid stuff. You want unbelievable reliability. Let's face it. If you're a domestic residence, grid connect, and your inverter stops working.
Yeah, you might not notice.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of councils around, I won't mention any, that have got lots of systems out there that they wouldn't even know that if they're on or off.
Yeah, because there's a bit of greenwashing happening and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's a weird one. But so what about the battery offerings from DPA? Yeah.
So we have Power Plus, like a really big one for us.
Yeah.
And
very well known product.
Yeah, and they're here, right?
They're here, and that's a big thing.
Makes a big difference. And I should mention actually they've got their new all-in-one called the Whisper 7, which is a stackable batteries.
Great
and
name, actually.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
It is a good name. The marketing people did well on that one, I reckon.
Yeah. And so that's a battery and an inverter. So Power Plus,
is that all in one?
It's a stackable one, yeah. So
wow.
you put the base plate down, and then you put X number of batteries on top, and then you put the inverter on the top. So it's really quick to install.
Wow.
And so it's really good for that home energy, on-grid hybrid market.
Yep.
They also use off-grid, I think, as well.
Right.
But that's works really well.
Non-transformerless inverter though, so they have to size appropriately for surges.
Yeah, it's interesting the surge thing because
on the off-grid.
So like the day inverters, I've done testing on the surge. The surge is not too bad actually.
Oh, I know transformers can do maybe double.
Yeah, it did double, and it doesn't go for as long as like say the Selectronic does, but it did it pretty well.
Wow,
it's pretty interesting actually.
That's interesting.
I I like the low frequency transformer inverters, Victron and Selectronic.
Right,
I like those, and when I take them apart. I don't take the Selectronics apart very much, but the Victron ones I do because we replace the boards and stuff.
Wow.
We repair them. Like I can see how it works. It's relatively simple. You've got the FET bridge. So for those of you who don't know how it works, the power comes in. You got FETs, which a FET is basically a switch, right?
Yep.
It's a gate, and it switches it this way and that way to create the sine wave. And then it goes through a transformer, and the transformer steps the voltage up, but also smooths that stepped sine wave into a nice pure sine wave. So it's a pretty simple operation, and there's not too much electronics in there really. Whereas the other ones, I don't really. It's a similar concept, but I don't feel like I have as much handle on how they operate.
Right.
And you're probably not going to repair them. You're probably just going to get a new one.
Yeah, gotcha.
But like the day that I tested was actually a NOARC, same thing. Surge was really good.
That's really good.
Yeah, I was really
So you were surprised?
Yeah, I was surprised because I had a preconceived idea, I suppose.
Yeah,
because people go, oh, well, they can't do this.
That's exactly.
It's like, well, have you tried? It's like, nah, but my mate told me they can't.
Yeah, well, I have to admit, I played if I was American, played the fifth. But yeah, because I just assumed straight away. Wow.
I mean, I'd still be, if somebody's coming to us for a big inductive load, so there's off-grid house and then there's off-grid workshop, and that's different.
And there's off-grid cattle station, which is like a workshop.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So if you've got big industrial equipment, you've got to be more careful.
Of course you do.
And you've got Selectronic, you've got Victron, and you've got NOARC. And they're different prices for a reason.
Yes.
There's a reason that the Selectronic costs more it's made here for a start.
Yes.
It's a bomb proof.
Yeah, it's a beast. Yeah, exactly. And it can do, let's face it, most people who get them probably use about 2 or 3% of their functionality because they can do a lot of stuff if you know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. If you look at the menu for it's like I had to go through the testing for Discover batteries for Selectronic, and so I had to go through that menu in fine detail. And it's just like I thought I knew how an inverter. I thought I knew all the variables.
Yeah,
I didn't. There's so much, and I'm still only halfway through it. Some of the time, some of the timed conditional stuff. But yeah, it's so yeah. Getting back to batteries, so Power Plus is a big one for us. Discover is a big one for us. Rack mount, and then the Helios block battery, and then the CNI 210 batteries. This is sort of an emerging thing. We do a fair bit with Pylon Tech, just because they've been around forever.
They have,
and there's a lot of what I like about them is that there's runs on the board, so there's a lot of information on the internet about these things.
Yes.
So you can find someone who's had a similar problem.
Right.
They've got a long relationship with Victron and with Selectronic, I think.
Yeah.
And I've been dealing with them for a long time, so I know how to replace the BMS and stuff, and how to go in and get the data and things. And people have these systems, and they want more. And installers install what they know, right? Of
course.
So they're popular for that reason, but they're only a 15 cell instead of a 16, so they're slightly lower voltage. And they're a good price,
Yeah, right.
So it's a safe, lower priced battery, but it's not in the same quality range as like your Discover or your Power Plus, and the tech support is just not in the same league either. But as long as you sort of understand that, it's horses for courses, and we do a little bit of ZYC. Simplify, we don't really do anymore.
Yep.
I'm just really worried I'm going to forget one again.
Yeah, no, don't. Stop there. Look, obviously, for anyone watching this, we could talk for hours. I won't even tell you what time it is because I've gone past what I usually do. We'll have to get you to come back because we haven't talked about music, scales, bagpipes, and more on philosophy. So I definitely want you to come back. But have you got some final words, like for an installer who's doing some off-grid stuff and looking at these batteries and hasn't come to DPA? What do you suggest? Because obviously, if they're going to speak to you, that's going to be a great benefit to them because you're passionate, knowledgeable. But what's some advice for them, like when they're looking at a place that they can buy this equipment?
I guess it's that we back it up with, we can help you work out what to use for the job. And, it's not just sort of based on sales or what we want to move that month. And you can think of it as being like, we have like a curated range, you might say, is that we don't stock things or push things that we don't think are any good, So we're quite careful with that stuff, and we get to know it, and we make sure we know how it works. So how sometimes you buy something and you ring them up and you go, how does this work? And they're like, I don't know.
I'll just sell it.
I'll just sell it. I've just got it in, which is fair enough for some things. But with this type of stuff, you need that a lot of the time because, you put a system in and it's X number of hours drive away if you're doing rural stuff.
Yes.
You don't want to go back too many times. No. You often will need to. But the amount of times you're going to be doing that is going to be proportional to the quality of support that you get and the quality of products you put in. And, things like Victron and Selectronic and actually like the monitoring platforms make that so much easier. And the Discover batteries have their own monitoring platform as well, which makes a big difference for knowing what's going on and for that after sales stuff. So, yeah, it's a big difference, I think, that we can help in that technical way. But we're quite well organised and easy to deal with, so we get things out quickly, and we're all quite pleasant to deal with, which I think makes a difference.
Oh, it makes a huge difference.
We're smaller, so we're more sort of personal with that stuff. We've been around a while, so we're not going anywhere. And we also have like some interesting things happening as well, like the sodium. So these batteries are basically available sort of now.
Wow.
They've just become so, and they work with the normal inverters.
That's fantastic.
And I think there'll be a big deal for like a couple of applications. The ones we've got at the moment are just 48, but I think they'll go. The high voltage stuff will become a big deal because those inverters already have big voltage windows. But if you think about you're putting in a bunch of batteries in the basement of a big tower, the sodium batteries are significantly safer than the lithium ones because they don't have the problem of the electrolyte catching on fire as easily.
From an insurance.
So from an insurance point of view, you've got a huge battery bank in the basement. Some of them won't cover you.
Absolutely.
And ferrophosphate is pretty safe, but I know that there's some applications like trains and hospitals that just won't have the stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. As I said, we haven't even talked about probably 90% of what I've written down, but we've talked about a lot. We've talked so much, and thanks again for coming in.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're definitely going to come back again if you want to.
Yeah, I'd love to.
We might even next time, seeing how we go, have a three-way conversation with one of our A grades to talk a little bit about that CNI battery space. But
it's a really interesting emerging sort of space.
It's all energy storage, comms, and
that's a whole topic. Comms,
FCAS arbitrage. We didn't cover that either. Next time. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.